I saw a challenge recently from Liberty Bleeds Silver, one of my fellow YouTubers, and it was a challenge offered, I think, originally by Mr. and Mrs. Mr. and Mrs. West Texas Stacker. They are stackers in Texas, obviously. And the challenge is to post your oldest coin. If you are new to the channel, my name is Dub C. I want to thank you for being with me here today. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, I'd love to encourage you to go ahead and click on that subscription button, become part of this community. A challenge is when a YouTuber kind of prompts other YouTubers who make content kind of like ours, that is dealing with precious metals or rare coins, or in my case, both, to kind of have an idea that they can post a short video about. So this will be a double challenge for me because my videos tend to run so long. I'm going to try to shoot this in less than 10 minutes. Let's see if we actually get there. Liberty Bleeds had an example of a Spanish piece from right at that cusp area when Spain was really starting to develop the New World. So it's possible that that piece was even made out of the precious metals coming from New Spain, right, North, Central, and South America. But I've got some examples here of 8 reales. I talk about these in my channel a lot because they are an important part of coinage history and also American coinage history, our own silver dollars based on these pieces. The first true global currency, these pieces were circulating all throughout Europe, also in the Americas, and then all the way to China and the rest of Asia. So truly a global currency. And the great thing about these pieces is that they started making them in the 1500s, I believe, maybe even 1400s, but I'm pretty sure 1500s. This is an example from 1784, so this is a pretty old piece. Interestingly, these pieces were legal tender to circulate in the United States of America all the way up until 1857, so definitely a tie-in with Americans' currency. But I wanted to go back again as far as we possibly could, and I've got some examples here that are a little bit more interesting, maybe, if you like early coins. These are pieces from the dawn of coinage. It's kind of mind-blowing to think that there was a period of time where humans and human civilization did not understand money. They didn't use money. They had barter systems, they had honor systems, they had collective systems. It's a fascinating area, but it doesn't really involve coins. Somewhere, sometime around maybe 700 BC, coins started to emerge, and they weren't what we would call a coin now, right? We see a coin now, and it's just a disc of metal with a design on the back and a design on the front. These earliest coins, we call them proto-coins. I think that's a great description. There was a series of rivers in what is now Western Turkey, right, somewhere on the shores of the Mediterranean. And people had decided a long time ago that gold and silver had value, right? This was way before there was such a thing as a coin. But there were small nuggets in these rivers, and people would, hunt for these nuggets, kind of like we look for placer mining now. And they would pan for these items, and they would find these nuggets, and they would exchange them for goods and services. So these pieces were made out of the natural alloy of gold and silver. That's called electrum. And there was no refining going on. They were just finding these lumps of electrum in these streams, and they would use them as a tool for barter. And it was so much easier when you think about it. If you needed a ladder and the person that makes ladder didn't want the duck that you had, and you had to trade to the fisherman for his fish before you got the fish that the guy that made the ladder needed. It was really awkward to do trade in a barter type system. But if you had a nugget, a little electrum nugget, and you could trade it to the guy that makes ladders, he would gladly take it because he knew that he could trade it directly to the fish guy to get the fish that he needed. He didn't care about your duck. He didn't need it. And you can see how this was a much more efficient system, and it got more and more efficient incredibly quickly. So the nuggets started to be standardized, right? They maybe started melting them down and making them a very specific weight, because it wouldn't be fair to exchange your, 50-gram nugget for my 3-gram nugget. So you need some standardization. And then you need something scratched onto the surface or maybe pounded into the surface to let everybody know that this is one of those nuggets that weighs exactly what it's supposed to be. You can see how all of these elements start coming together. All of these boxes start being checked off, from being a raw nugget that is about as proto-coin as you can get, to something that is of a standard weight, maybe even a standard purity, and has a device or design on it to let people know that it is those things. That's really close to a modern coin, right? The only element that's missing is maybe the official seal of some kind of a state official, right? Some kind of the person who's making these, or maybe even the king or the queen. And when you've got all those pieces together, you've got something that's really, really close to a modern coin. So that's what these pieces are. We're going to look at this piece first. This is a small lump of electrum that is from an uncertain Ionian mint. You can see there at the top, a lot of these mints, we don't really know where they were, but they were somewhere in that maybe 250, 300 mile radius that I showed earlier. So this was on that same area. This would be considered part of it, Ionia, and this was a region that had been settled by Greeks. So it is of the ancient Greek tradition. And this is an interesting design because it's got a kind of a crude design there. It almost looks like, I think, a bird with its wings out. You know, you can leave this open to interpretation. It's really hard to understand what it might have meant or what the symbol might have meant to these folks. But you can see the back, the nugget of electrum, after it had been probably refined and weighed to a very specific weight, was placed on a punch, and you can see that punch just chucked right into that gold. And then the front of it was hit with a different punch with that design that was stamped into it, and that's making a coin. This piece of electrum, 600 to 550 BC, so somewhere around 2,400 years ago. This was of a system called a stater. The gold stater was about 7 or 8 grams of gold, so it would have been right about a quarter of a troy ounce. And this is 1/12 stater. This would have been about 3 or maybe 4 or 5 days worth of labor for the average person. And you can see just how tiny that is compared to my thumbnail. So this was a very small lump of electrum that has all of those boxes checked, right? This is a piece that is about the same age. We're looking at a piece from 625 to 550. Technically, this one is maybe just a little bit older, right? 625. And this is of that same stater series, but this is 1/24th. Look how tiny that is. This literally would have been maybe a day's worth of work for the average laborer. You would have gotten paid with something like this. Remember, there were no pockets. You were wearing a robe if you were wearing anything. This was an easy thing to get lost. And this also has the stamp. You can see that this is where the nugget was laid on that die. And this device here, NGC calls a swastika. That has nothing to do with Nazis, right? This was a design that had been used for thousands of years, a very simple design, often meaning good luck. This is an example of one of the earliest proto-coins out there. I do believe it checks all of the boxes. It is made of electrum, that is the naturally occurring alloy of gold and silver. At this point, they were probably refining it to make maybe a little bit more silver in the mix than gold. You could see how that would work, right? That's debasing coinage. It goes back 2,500 years. Governments have been doing that. Think about our coins from 1960 and before and how they became cupro-nickel, but they still look the same. Yeah, this was probably something that the powers that be were doing going back thousands of years. The pieces that came immediately after these pieces, much more closely related to how we would see a coin, in that they have a very specific design that looks like something that would have been put there by a king. In this case, it would have been King Croesus, Croesus of Lydia, of this same area. And Croesus was the first person to start refining these precious metals and making a gold system and a silver system. So we actually had both of them. And if the name Croesus sounds familiar, you've heard the expression, the riches of Croesus. He became immensely wealthy and powerful, probably in small part due to the advent of coinage. This was really one of the first kingdoms that was putting out what we would consider to be modern coinage and coins of any type. And they all go back to these Ionian pieces going back about 2,400 years ago. If you've got any questions about these, check below to see that video that I made earlier about the Dawn of Coinage and some of the examples there. If you haven't visited Liberty Bleed Silver or Mr. and Mrs. West Texas Stacker, check out their channels also. Look to see if you've got any other examples out there of these oldest coins. If you've got an old example and you want to make a video, go ahead and do that. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, go ahead and click on that like and subscribe button. Love to have you be part of this community. And as always, thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey as we go deeper into the world of coins and physical precious metals in less than 10 minutes.